Hi everyone, my name is Niall and today I'm going to show you how I made both of my Avengers Endgame songs, from programming the orchestra and drums, recording guitars and bass, mixing and mastering, and also how I uploaded the song to stores like iTunes and Spotify. I get a lot of questions about that. People are wondering how I deal with copyright issues and the legal stuff. I use a service called DistroKid. DistroKid is an online distribution service that allows you to upload your song to stores like iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, Amazon, Apple Music, and a ton of other ones as well. For $20 a year, you can upload as many songs as you want, and if you do cover songs like I do, they also handle all of the legal copyright stuff for $12 per song. So you don't have to worry about buying licenses or paying songwriters. DistroKid will handle all of that for you, and the process is pretty simple. All you have to do is upload your song, give it a name and artwork, select which stores you want to upload to. If it's a cover, put in the name of the songwriter and the original song, and then click upload, and within a couple of days your song will be on the stores. It might take a bit longer to get the licenses for cover songs, but within a week your song will be on the stores. So if you click the link in the description, you'll get 7% off your first year's membership. That's distrokid.com/VIP/Niall. So thank you to DistroKid for sponsoring the video. Okay, so here we are in Mixcraft. Mixcraft is the program that I use to record and edit all of my music. I've been using it for probably around 7 years now, so I'm very comfortable with it, and I know all of the keyboard shortcuts and tips and tricks to make it easier on myself. So this is the Avengers Endgame theme. I'll do Portals afterwards, but this is what this one sounds like. So you've heard this before if you've watched the video. This is generally the layout of my projects. I have the original song on top, the orchestra, drums, bass, rhythm guitars, backing lead guitars, and then the main lead guitars. So the very first thing that I have to do when I open up a project is arrange the song and then match the tempo. So with this one I took 3 songs from the Avengers Endgame soundtrack and put them all together just to make a longer song. I could have just done one song, but I wanted to just make kind of a compilation of the best bits of all the tracks. Along the top here, you'll see all of these markers. These are my tempo changes, my time signature changes, and they also just give me a guideline of where the different sections of the songs are. So this is one song, this is another song, this is another song. So it's just easier to see where everything is. I've matched all of the tempos here, so if I click M is for the metronome, and if I click this, you will hear this is in time. So after this, what I do then is I have to recreate the orchestra. So if I open up my submix here, a submix is just a group of instruments. This is what the orchestra looks like. I have everything divided up into different sections. So this is the bass section. Then I have the short violins, so they're the staccato violins. Then I have the main violins or the main strings. And then the rest of these are the brass section. It might be a bit intimidating trying to listen through this and trying to recreate the soundtrack if you've never done this kind of thing before. If you focus on the bass and then focus on the main lead, the one lead that stands out to you, they're the 2 easiest things to pick out. So if I go over here to the main Avengers theme, let's just try and listen for the bass in this part. So hopefully you heard the bass there. This is what I have programmed for the bass. So after I have the bass done, then generally what I do is try to layer it up. So in the original song I can hear kind of like a low brass thing. So what I've done is added a tuba underneath this as well. So over here on the left you can change your instrument by clicking the piano icon. So I have the tuba that comes with Mixcraft, and then I also have my East-West Symphonic Orchestra tuba as well. This is just a slightly more real sounding plugin, but it's not necessary. So then we'll just listen to what all of these bass layers sound like when they add up. You'll also notice here I have a cello, which is an octave above the bass. So after that, what I have to do is pick out the main melody. So the main melody is the Avengers theme, obviously, which sounds like this. You all know it, so I'll go down here. I can hear that it's a big brass section, so it's going to be French horns, trumpets, trombones, all that kind of stuff. So if I go here, French horn. Same again with the trumpet is going to be an octave up. Okay, so that's the brass section then. After that, all I do is duplicate both of the brass sections and make them into strings. So that's what I've done up here. So the exact same thing, but just on the strings as well. So, and then it just builds up and adds a nice layered effect. In the background here, you can also hear some staccato strings. So if I just double click on this, it will open up the MIDI editor. So if I scroll up here, you have this. As you can see down here, all the dynamics of these are kind of adjusted. Because if this was all full volume, if I select all of these and press shift and drag everything up, it doesn't sound very real. But by adjusting those, kind of similar to what a real violinist would play, by accenting certain notes, it gives it a much more real feel. And then once again, all I do here is do an octave of this. So the two of those layered together sounds like this. And then put that together with the bass. And then if you layer that with all of the main lead parts, and then there's one more part in the background of the song that you can hear. It's kind of in the background and it is hard to hear, but if you just listen to this on its own, it does sound like it's missing something. It's missing these extra couple of notes just to make it sound a bit bigger. So if I go down here to the bottom, I have this. Again, I've just done an octave of this. And then all of those layered together sounds like this. After I've done the orchestra, the next thing I do is program the drums. So I always put in a rough pass of the drums first, and then I go back and edit them later on to make them sound more realistic. But all I'm doing with the drums is just trying to get a basic beat, just so I can play along to it. So I'll double click on this. This is what my drums sound like and look like. I use Superior Drummer for all of my drums. I open up this, open up U. This is Superior Drummer. So if I play this, you'll see it happening here. What I also do then is I humanize the drums. So if I go in here, you'll see that they're not actually lined up to the grid anymore. It just makes it sound a little bit more realistic. As good as a drummer as you are, you will never hit the drums at the exact same time on the beat. It's just physically impossible. So after I've done the drums, or after I've roughly programmed the drums, I do the rough recordings. And to do the rough recordings, all I do is go back to my orchestra track, I solo one of these tracks. So all I have to do is just play along to each of these individual tracks. So if I solo any of these, I have another track here. Again, I have one more track down here. So once I have that all done, and And then I do the exact same thing for every other instrument. I go through the lead guitars, I go down to the lead guitar section, which is this. I do the same thing an octave up. I do the same thing another octave up. And then all three of those layered together. Three of those layered with the backing leads. Then what I also do is just recreate the bass. I have two bass tracks. There's one clean and one heavy bass, and I just kind of merge the two of them together. So down here I have my rhythm tracks, and this is just following the exact same pattern as the bass. I'm triple tracking my rhythm guitars, so I have my three main guitars. I have one in the center, one panned right, one panned left, and then I also duplicate both of those and turn them an octave down. So this sounds very messy and very ugly. But it just adds an extra depth to the rhythm guitars. And then combine that with the drums. So then adding back in the backing leads. I'm going to mute the orchestra for a second just to show you what the difference the orchestra makes. So this is everything without the orchestra. So it sounds pretty good, but then when I add in the orchestra, it adds that little bit of interest, it gives it more body. So I guess I should talk about my tones a little bit as well. I use Pod Farm for the clean tone, and I use the Line 6 Helix for my bass. For my rhythms, I use bias effects. So I record everything DI, which is the direct input of the guitar. So I like recording DI because it gives me the freedom to change my tones whenever I want, but it is also intensive because, as you see here, I have to run bias effects or Pod Farm or the Line 6 Helix as a plugin on each of these tracks. So it's a little bit intensive on your system if you don't have a powerful computer. So again, this is what the DI sounds like with bias effects on. And then all I've done is just mix those down, so it's a bit easier to run when I'm recording. I've done the exact same thing down here with my rhythm or with my lead guitars. So without anything, this is what it sounds like. And then with Pod Farm, and I've done the exact same thing for the lead guitar as well. Running DI is this. So after I do my rough recordings of all of these things, I go back and do the final recordings. So when I'm recording the bass is pretty easy to do. I just go through and record it. with the rhythm guitars. Sometimes they're a little bit tricky because whenever I'm doing staccato-y things, there likes to be a noise. So as you can see here, I've cut up this track. So obviously between here, there might have been some noise or little clicks or finger noise or other weird things happening between the two of these. So I like to just cut out all of these things just to make sure there's no noises where there shouldn't be anything. Another thing that I also do is I don't worry about recording the whole thing in one take. As you can see here, I have this track broken up into a ton of different pieces. So this is as much as I was able to play while keeping it clean. So in some of these cases, down at the bottom here, you'll see what I've actually recorded. So for this section here, all I recorded was these two notes. So I don't worry about trying to record everything the whole way through. I can do that if I was ever playing this live or trying to do it for a video. Obviously, yes, I play it the full way through. But for doing the final recordings, I always just take my time, do it section by section if I need to. And that's what these markers are for. After the final recordings are done, what I'm doing is mixing and mastering. I have been mixing as I go through. I generally mix as I go through just to give me a better idea of things. There's a couple of stages with mixing. There's the volumes and then there's also effects to make everything sit well together. So when I'm doing my volumes, generally I work with the drums, bass and rhythm. Just the drums on their own. I add in the bass. And I'm just making sure that I can still hear everything pretty clearly when I layer all these things up. So adding the rhythm. Obviously, if the rhythm was way down here, that's way too quiet, so what I do then is just keep adjusting it until it sounds good. Then I layer in the backing leads, and then obviously within the backing leads as well, I have to adjust these to make sure that everything sounds good. And right here you can hear that the main lead sounds way too loud, but that's just because I've actually left on the DI track as well as the other track. So that's one pretty clear instance where you can hear that that thing is way too loud. So muting this and then it goes back to, which is much better mixed. And then I add in the lead guitars as well. And then as soon as all of those are layered in, I add in the orchestra. So obviously if the orchestra was way up here, that is obviously way too loud. So I turn this down just until I can barely hear it and then turn it back up a small bit, just to give it that orchestra feel. The song is on guitar. The guitar is the main focus of it. The orchestra is just the backing, just to give it a bit more feel and a bit more body. The next stage of the mixing is where you start adding effects. So as you can see here on my rhythm guitars, I have an equalizer and a reverb. So if I go to my rhythm here, I've made sure that my tone was already pretty good and it's pretty carved out to what I want it to sound like. But in here I'm just doing some extra shaping. Here around 300, that's where it kind of gets a bit muddy. So I can turn that down a small bit. Up here in the highs around 5,000, there's a little bit of hiss. That I want to get rid of. And then also just here at 1000, I want to give it a small bit of boost just to make it stand out in the mix a bit more. These are always things that I'm just experimenting with. Every song changes. I'm always messing with something. And then I also add a bit of reverb to the song as well. Like very subtle. You can probably not even hear this. So the reverb just makes the sound hang on for just that extra little second. Another thing that I add is this, it's the Isotope Ozone 5 and Imager. So what this does is it widens the sound. It gives it a bit more space. You probably won't hear that if you're listening on a phone, but if you're listening on headphones, you'll definitely be able to hear the difference. Then with my lead tracks, what I'm doing here is I have another EQ. This is a slightly more shaped EQ. So I'm going to reset this just to show you how I do my EQing. So I can already hear and see that this has a lot of low end. So all I have to do is just adjust this, maybe up to 100, 150 to cut off all of that low end, because that's where the bass is. With mixing, you want to make sure that everything's separated. If everything was occupying the same space in the frequency spectrum, it would get very messy. There sounds like there's a bit too many mids. I can hear right here in the middle, there is a lot of stuff happening right here. There's also a lot of stuff happening in the high end as well. So what I'm going to do is just cut off some of this, not all of it. Another thing that I'm going to do is just turn on the surgical mode for this. The other one is more natural, but this allows you to kind of shape the sound a bit better. Below 100 is where the sub bass sits. Around 200 is where the muddiness of the sound kind of sits. So I always kind of adjust this a small bit. Up here above 10k, above maybe between 10 to 15 and anything beyond that is where all the hiss of the guitar sounds. So you do want some of that to come through because that's what makes the guitar sound like a guitar. But a lot of it can get a bit messy and a bit noisy. So sometimes I do turn this down. Another thing that I can hear is a resonant frequency. A resonant frequency is just a frequency that doesn't kind of mesh well with something. So right here I can hear there's a resonant frequency. I'm going to try and find it for you. So I'm going to turn this down to 0 just to show you what the difference is. So I'm going to toggle this on and off just so you can hear the difference. With some of them, I do need to do a bit more EQing. Like right here, you can see I've had to do 3 resonant frequencies. So let's lift these up and just show you what they actually are. Yeah, so right here you can hear that this is a very bad resonant frequency. Sometimes this just happens with guitars and distortion in and around, like between 1,000 and 5,000. That's what makes a guitar sound like a guitar. So you don't want to get rid of too many of these. Whenever you're doing this kind of thing, you would solo the track to pinpoint any bad frequencies. Make sure that you EQ as well when listening to the whole mix. And with some of these things, I'm also doing some automation. Automation is pretty much where you adjust certain properties of the track as it's playing. So I can adjust the volume, the pan. If there was effects here, I can adjust the different effects. So I can adjust the amount of reverb as the song is playing, or I can adjust the imaging as the song is playing. So now that the mixing is done, the last step to do is the mastering. And mastering is pretty much just the glue and the final little touches to make the song finished. So with my mastering, I have 2 effects here. This is an equalizer. It's like a visual equalizer. These are not very technical terms, but I find that just adding a bit of this brightness and warmness, all it does is just adds a little bit of high end, a little bit more low end, takes out some mids, but it gives it a nice sound. It sounds more like a professional recording. I'll let you listen to it without and with, just so you can get the difference. And the other thing is the Isotope Ozone 5 mastering suite. So in here you have a lot of different things. You have equalizer, reverb, harmonic exciter, dynamics, which is compression. Then you also have stereo imaging and the post equalizer and a maximizer. The equalizer is the same as what I showed you earlier. The equalizer is just to EQ the song. So the equalizer is just shaping it a little bit. It's getting rid of some of the low muddiness here. I'm getting rid of some of the annoying high frequencies, and I'm getting rid of the very high hissing frequencies up here. The harmonic exciter, this isn't really doing a lot because I have everything turned down, but it just adds a little bit almost distortion to certain parts. The dynamics is the big thing, and it's something I've been trying to tone back on recently, just to let the mix sound better on its own. But the dynamics is just where you're adding a little bit of compression, a little bit of extra oomph to some of these parts. So if I turn on and off the compression, you'll hear what it's doing. So the compression is just making it sound a little bit more finalized, a bit more finished. It's adding an extra boost to the kick drum. It's also getting rid of some of the high hissing as well. And it's just kind of refining some of the mids and the highs. I also add a small bit of the stereo imaging. As you can see, I've turned it down a small bit. This is like a master control. Again, this just gives it a bit of a wider feel. Then we have the post equalizer. The post equalizer is where I'm doing a decent amount of stuff. And again, I have it turned down a small bit. The post equalizer is where I'm making it sound more like a professional recording. So the big thing with my mixes is that I'm always comparing it to professional bands. And whenever you listen to professional recordings, you hear that there's always this extra little boost up here. I probably could do more to do it before I do the mastering, or at least at the moment, it's an easier way to get the sound that I'm looking for. Without this, I'll let you listen to what it sounds like. It just gives it that extra bit of brightness that it needs to sound a bit more professional. And then I also have the maximizer, which is pretty much just a limiter. It stops the track from clipping. I'm going to let you listen to the song without mastering and then with mastering. Before mastering, it sounds still pretty decent, but it's just missing that professional quality. So after I finish the song, I make sure to listen to it on a ton of different headphones and speakers. So I check it on my phone, I check it on my main headphones, 3 different pairs of earphones, I check it on my car speakers. If it sounds good on all of those, then it'll sound pretty much good on everything that anybody will be listening to it on. And that's it for this song. I'll give you a quick run through of Portals as well, but it's more of the exact same stuff. I follow the exact same process every single time. Okay, so this is my Portals project. As you can see, it's exactly the same layout as the last project. The original song on top, the orchestra, drums, bass, rhythm, backing lead, and then leads. With this one, I didn't have to do any arranging, because the song was pretty much perfectly laid out as it was. All I did was get rid of the last 3 or 4 seconds just to make it finish better for a guitar song. Again, the orchestra is pretty much exactly the same. I have all of my bass section, my strings, my horns. The only new thing with this one is I've added a choir. So I'll just solo the choir here to let you listen to it. I'll show you the brass section on its own now. And now I'll show you the strings. And then last but not least, the bass section. And then all of that layered up together sounds like this. And now moving on to the drums. The drums are pretty much identical to the last project, but the one thing I've done differently here is added orchestral drums. Because as you can hear in the original song, there's some very big drum hits. So I've tried to emulate that here using the Mixcraft drums as well as the East West Symphonic Orchestra drums. So I'll let you listen to that. So as you can hear, it sounds very big and powerful, and then I layer that up with the actual drums as well. And I'll let you listen to this with the orchestra just so you can hear what it sounds like. So the drums are finished, now moving on to the bass. The bass is pretty much identical to the last project. The only different thing here is that I've done some more automation of the volume just to kind of make it build up a bit more. So as you can see, it kind of dips down here a little bit and then it comes back up to full volume. So I'll let you hear what the bass sounds like on its own. Moving on to the rhythm guitars are exactly the same, they just follow the bass. So I'm going to let you listen to the rhythm guitars on their own and then combine them with the bass. And then we combine the bass and the rhythm. And then I'm going to combine it with the drums as well, just so you can hear how big it sounds. So moving on to the backing leads. The backing leads are pretty much the same as last time. The only difference here is that I've actually recreated the choir on the guitar as well. And that's what this sounds like. So I'll let you listen to the backing leads plus the rhythm, bass and drums. Then moving on to the leads. So the leads are the exact same as last time, I just went through and re-recorded all of the individual instrument tracks on the guitar. So like this track here, this was the French horn. As you can see here, I've done some automation just to make sure that it follows the build-up of the song. If this was all one volume, it wouldn't really work that well. I'm just making sure that it follows the dynamics of the song, so it slowly builds up towards the end. So I'll let you listen to the main lead and the backing lead, just so you can hear the differences and see how they interact with one another. So now I'll let you listen to everything without the orchestra, and then I'll just toggle it on and off, just so you can hear the differences. The orchestra makes a huge difference. You can kind of hear how it just fills out everything. And once again, this is my mastering chain. It's exactly the same as last time. I always save a template of my project so that I can load up all of my previous settings and not having to worry about creating all of this kind of stuff from scratch. And that's pretty much it for Portals. And that's it. That's how I made both of my Avengers Endgame songs. Let me know if you want to see this kind of thing again in the future. I can go more in depth on certain things like drums or guitar tones, so just leave a comment below. So once again, thanks to DistroKid for sponsoring the video, and I will see you next time.